This is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're exploring the sports gambling landscape in New York, as well as the online gaming world more broadly. And our guest in the studio is Joe Maloney, President and CEO of the Sports Betting Alliance, whose members include some of the licensed sports gambling operators in New York, like FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, and Fanatics Sportsbook. So, Joe, I can't think of any sort of big lobbying push on the gambling front that is at least getting discussed a lot. So what brought you to Albany this week?
It's a great question. Our three core objectives of the Sports Betting Alliance are as follows. Expand the map on legalized sports wagering. We've checked that box here in the state of New York. 2, defend against market restrictions and policy proposals that might make it difficult for our legalized licensed operators to continue to provision legal and robust form of legal sports wagering. So those are conversations around tax increases or policy proposals that might narrow betting markets. That's a conversation and a pretty active one here in the state of New York. And then the third objective is expanding the map on legalized online casino, iGaming, which currently is only legalized in 7 jurisdictions throughout the U.S. And so that's a conversation that we're going to continue to have here in the state of New York, and ways in which we can begin to engage stakeholders on that topic, what it means, what it might take, and how we can begin to platform this product for New Yorkers across the state.
Well, why don't we talk about that last point, which has been the dream of the Senate's gambling point person, Joe Adabo, for years now. But from the consumer perspective, and maybe the state more broadly, what is the added benefit of allowing for what would basically be online casino gambling in a legal format? It seems like it could be detrimental to the brick and mortar institutions that are job, creation machines, as opposed to the online outlets, which, seems for the most part, you set up a server and it doesn't employ the same amount of people. So from the state's perspective, aside from revenue, what is the big plus of online casino gambling?
Yeah, so it's really diverse set of opinions on that question exactly, particularly the discussion around what we term in the industry as cannibalization. Like, does the product actually cannibalize? Does the digital product cannibalize the land-based product? And at the SBA, and including one specific member who has a number of robust brick and mortar locations throughout the country, it's an emphatic no. And it is actually a plus up to land-based revenue. When you look at some of the robust gaming jurisdictions that also have iGaming, you continue to see land-based growth. What land-based casinos have done is set up live dealer studios. They're adding jobs actually to land-based casino payrolls. They're developing broader loyalty programs that are beginning with a customer that's downloading the app and then creating incentives to bring that person into the brick and mortar establishment to not just play a table game, but to go out to eat or to bring friends and family and to stay overnight. So it's absolutely a diverse amount of opinions on that. We here at the SBA, we talk about this as an opportunity for land-based casinos. And most importantly, in some of the jurisdictions where we've really advanced the ball down the field, and we're going to share a lot of this information back with New York as they begin a process to discuss this. We meet with labor unions on these discussions in other jurisdictions. We meet directly with land-based casino operators that aren't necessarily that excited about live dealer or that excited about a digital-based product, but have questions about how they can either be held harmless or how they can participate in some of the revenue upside as well. So the thing about gaming in this country, when you legalize any form of gaming, there's winners and losers. We try to engage in that multi-stakeholder dialogue to ensure that we can actually have a rising tide that lifts all boats. So we've got a lot of work to do here in New York on that specifically. We understood downstate licenses would be a really big priority, so we haven't even advanced the ball that far down the field. But we're going to start to put the game plan together and start to have those conversations and engage in a very open and a very transparent way with the governor and with everybody else here in the State House and the State Senate to begin that conversation.
If state policymakers do decide to go down that route, what's the rationale for involving gambling operators who aren't involved in the brick and mortars in the online side of things? I could understand if I'm Rivers Casino and I operate brick and mortar location in Schenectady, why I should and could make a case to give me an online platform. Why should someone, and maybe they're not actually interested in it, I imagine they are, why should someone like DraftKings or FanDuel be allowed into that space? Why shouldn't it just be limited to an online extension of those brick and mortar locations?
It's a great question, and the answer to it is competition innovation. You want to provide a product. You want to create a legal and regulated market that benefits the consumer. And what benefits the consumer is competition.
We could have 5 or 6 different operators if we base it on the landscape right now, right?
That's one definition of competition. Another definition is 8, 10, 12. It truly just depends. But ultimately, who benefits in a competitive marketplace? The consumer.
In a regulated marketplace of competition.
Particularly a regulated, where
and our
you're driving license
gaming commission,
fees.
though, hasn't been the greatest regulator of sorts. I mean, we don't see an innovative approach to regulation from them, unless you disagree with me.
Well, I'm not the judge of how a regulator interprets innovation.
You don't want to comment on your regulator? That's wild.
But what I will say is this, and then we've had a lot of these conversations. We've had these conversations here today in Albany. A legal regulated marketplace has to be able to drive growth and innovation. Growth and innovation benefits the customer. It benefits the customer in the form of pricing, of course. It also benefits the customer in continuing to be able to meet them where they are. If you cannot innovate within a legal regulated marketplace, you're just going to have one dumb pipe. You're going to have a utility type product where a consumer is just forced to use this thing. But what ends up happening in that type of a market? They tend to look outside of that market to illegal and unregulated or different categories of gaming markets. So what we've been talking about a lot here, when you take all of this time and effort and money, licensing fees and the like, to create and erect and establish a legal regulated marketplace, the vigor and enthusiasm upon which you develop those markets has to be met with the same energy to eliminate and eradicate illegal and unregulated markets, particularly a product like gaming. So right now in this country, you cannot produce moonshine in a bathtub and manufacture it and package it and sell it, right? You're going to get caught and you're going to get in trouble. Same thing with, you're not going to sort of buy land and start, growing tobacco and sell cigarettes untaxed. You're not going to do that. There's an enforcement mechanism that's in place. Unfortunately, we're not meeting that challenge right now with illegal and unregulated. And now, of course, with sports wagering, you're beginning to see a whole new competitive entrant in the form of prediction market platforms that are federally registered and federally regulated and have none of the duties and obligations of, let's say, the New York statute or any of the statutes that have been passed in 39 jurisdictions, plus the District of Columbia on sports wagering. So at the end of the day, we have to have a very cerebral and intellectually curious and an open, honest conversation about what legal regulated markets need to provide. So to go back to your first question, we just believe in competition. We believe in competition helps drive innovation, drives more value back to customers, and ultimately we can create a legal regulated marketplace that is a rising tide that can lift all boats.
Well, before we move on and talk a little bit about those online prediction markets, let me reintroduce you for listeners just joining us. This is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're speaking with Joe Maloney, President and CEO of the Sports Betting Alliance, whose members include some of the licensed sports gambling operators here in New York. So online prediction markets, like the household names of Kalshi and Polymarket, are also in the mobile sports wagering space, even if they don't call it that. Do you want this type of activity out of New York, or do your members want to offer sports gambling through prediction markets, either in lieu of or on top of the existing regulated sports gambling products you offer in states like New York?
It's a good question. We don't have an official position on prediction
markets. What's your unofficial position?
I can't answer that question specifically because we have three members who have launched prediction market products and two that have not currently. So
are the ones that have launched it, are any of those operating in New York? Are those prediction markets available in New York?
Some operate certain types of markets and provide certain types of markets.
Including sports stuff?
Not including sports. Okay. So all three that have launched prediction market products have pledged that they will not offer sports event contracts in states with legalized online sports wagering. So where you're seeing that product is in states that have yet to legalize online sports betting, your Texases, your Californias, your Georgias, Minnesotas. What you'll see in some of what the existing SBA members are offering are things like culture markets and financial markets. Will Fed rates rise? But back to your question, it's a dynamic topic that is now, I would argue, stakeholders and regulators and policy stakeholders are very fluent in now, a way they weren't even a year ago when we began talking about the entrance of prediction market platforms and what it would mean. And here's the conversation that we're having. I no longer have to walk around and refer to the legal market boogeyman and Bovada and ban this and ban that. You can't ban this. You can try to take them to court and you can try to sue them. And they're largely not being granted, states aren't being granted the injunctive relief, so they're going to continue to operate. So we now have a very, very vibrant and competitive entrant or entirely new category of gaming. It's not even fair to call them an entrant because they're, as you said, not describing themselves as gambling. But ultimately, you're seeing these companies now begin to be valued at an astronomical number. They're gaining this infusion of capital. They're beginning to advertise. I'm on the treadmill every morning, 6 a.m., and I'm seeing a Kalshi ad on SportsCenter. And half of all digital ads, as just released last week, a piece of research, half of all digital ads regarding sports wagering in this country are from the prediction market category at this point. So we're seeing a massive infusion of advertising. So that's a conversation we just have to have with our regulators here in New York. We want to talk to policy stakeholders that are introducing legislation to restrict betting markets. Okay, well, let's have a conversation about what that means. If you're making it more expensive or you're actually eliminating an illegal betting market, such as how many points Jalen Brunson's going to have tonight, just know that that bettor will not stop doing that. They'll just move to a different category of gaming.
For some people, it will be enough of a threshold to keep them from doing it.
Possibly, but we don't necessarily know the answer to that question.
Sure.
We have the benefit of data. We understand how sometimes increasing levels of taxation can affect bettor behavior. Sometimes they stop. Other times we can see that they're moving to an entirely different, platform, illegal, unregulated. But now, again, we've got the attention and the sort of the cultural zeitgeist that is prediction market platforms right now. So they've got enough brand penetration that they're sitting right there, a digital storefront right next door to the legal regulated marketplace here in New York. They're not paying a 51% tax on revenue.
Well,
they're not submitting to those duties and obligations. We're not capturing that value here inside the state of New York.
Well, that was what I wanted to ask you about. I think there was, in the last fiscal year, nearly $2.4 billion in gross gaming revenue on sports wagering just here in New York, and that's getting taxed at that 51% rate. So that has to be appealing, the online prediction markets, because if they're going to be federally regulated, there's no way they're going to be taxed the same way. So, that has to be a very appealing future. You must be watching, what's going on with all these different states with a lot of interest.
Absolutely. Particularly right now, the tenor of the conversation in non-legalized jurisdictions is this is a thing that's out here. And so if you want to create and erect a legal regulated marketplace that can drive tax revenue, the likes of which you see in some of your neighboring states, you've got to get on the ball. You've got to start doing it now, because as first movers in the prediction market space, some of these newer entrants are just going to run over these states and just capture that, to the point where when you set up a legalized jurisdiction or a legal regulated marketplace, even companies like the ones I represent may even have a difficult and hard time capturing some of that revenue share and migrating it out of the prediction market space. 90% of the volumes on these platforms are sports event contracts. Right now, to answer your question, companies that we represent at the SBA, they really value these licenses. They're not in a position to be jeopardizing it. And even prior to launching prediction market platforms, the three companies that I represent, I know they've had a lot of earnest, a lot of worthwhile conversation with their regulators about, hey, what this means. Here's what we're not going to do. Here's what we are going to do, because they want to ensure the sanctity of that license. These companies pay for these licenses. They don't want to jeopardize these licenses. And these licenses are not granted in perpetuity. So we've got to continue to demonstrate to be a good, honest, and capable partner with the State Regulatory Commission and ensure that that license is in a position to be renewed when it comes time for renewal.
And tune into the Capitol Press Room later in the week when we'll play the second half of our conversation with Joe Maloney, President and CEO of the Sports Betting Alliance.
Support for the Capitol Press Room is provided in part by the Lawsuit Reform Alliance of New York. Fraud and lawsuit abuse impact car insurance costs for New Yorkers. Reforms are being proposed to mitigate their impact. Information on these reforms is available at keepnewyorkaffordable.org.
Support for the Capitol Press Room comes from O'Donnell & Associates, a public affairs firm providing strategic guidance to businesses and nonprofits on navigating policy and regulatory issues. More information is available at o'donnellsolutions.com.